Hey, Joe, how are you doing?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Hey, this past season, K-State enjoyed one of its best all-around defensive efforts in the last decade. The scoring defense was its best since 2003. Total yards were at a 7-year low. Had the second best third down defense in school history. I know cover three was a big asset to K-State in 2019, and you have many key players back. How do you keep the ball rolling in 2020?
Well, if you all those stats are great. I think that's certainly something that last year's team could be proud of. But when you go back and look at it, there's still a lot of missed opportunities out there. There was still a lot of stuff when you watch the film closely where there's indecision, um, technique errors, communication errors, things that we can continue to get better at. And those are mistakes that are going to be and they're going to be common in year one of any system, especially something that was so drastically different than what they had done here in the past. But I don't. I think the statistics and all those things will take care of themselves if we just worry about our execution. And we just got to get better at what we do, and that's the goal.
If I can just add, when you were promoted defense coordinator, I asked around some guys as to what to expect, and Denzel Goolsby said something really interesting. He said that Klanderman and Hazelton definitely have the same similarities with certain coverages they run, but Klanderman could be even more aggressive. Just hearing him talk about his defenses and man coverage and really getting to the quarterback, how would you describe your defensive philosophy?
Well, Scotty and I come from the same tree. That is correct. Some of the things that maybe worry him don't worry me as much, and vice versa. Some of the things that worry me maybe didn't worry him as much. And philosophically, I think I'm similar to Scotty in that I think that if you play sound defense and you eliminate explosive plays, you're going to give yourself a chance. Now, can you play sound defense and bring pressure? Sure. I don't think I'm a crazy pressure man, but I maybe what Denzel is referring to is I think we could have maybe been a little bit more aggressive in some of our zones. We maybe could have been a little bit more aggressive in some of our play calling situations. And I'm not saying anything was wrong. I'm just saying that that the way we fundamentally teach some things might be a little bit more aggressive.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, Coach, with the D coordinator role, is the biggest difference between that role and your previous role play calling, or is it something else that's the biggest adjustment for you?
Well, as I'm finding out right now through this time, one of the biggest adjustments is recruiting and how you touch different recruits, and that's a big thing. I mean, those guys the recruits want to get touched by the head coach. It's a big deal to get touched by the coordinator across all positions. And I think we're doing a good job as a staff of touching everybody. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the way that I think about things and approach my week, I would say you're probably right. The biggest difference is just having the responsibility of calling the game. Because I always approached every decision. Because I was a coordinator in the past, I always approached every decision with the coordinator, with the global picture in mind. And so my thinking in terms of how we structure our week won't change much. But yeah, I'm going to have to spend a little bit more time on how I want to call the game, things that I didn't have to worry about last year.
Hey, Joe, how do you approach with a limited amount of time that you have with these guys right now and obviously not being able to see them in person? How do you approach just trying to install what it is that you want to install right now?
Well, that's the million-dollar question right there, isn't it? I mean, I think that we're certainly taking advantage of the 4 hours that we're given. But to me, there's all different types of learners. And with a young football team, I think the way that the majority of our guys would learn best is the walkthrough aspect, the pictures. And we're not getting that right now. And so what we're trying to do right now is just make sure, and I think we're doing a good job of making sure, that the staff is on the same page. Obviously, with Steve being new, that's a challenge in and of itself. But even the guys that were here with, only being year 2 in the system, there was a lot of things that we needed to hash out yet. And I think we're doing a good job of getting that done. And if we're all on the same page with the same voice, it's going to help us move faster when we get everybody together. So right now it's film with the guys, it's terminology with the guys, learning that stuff. And the walkthrough stuff and the actual pictures. They're gonna have to wait till we get some FaceTime with them.
How have things gone with Steve so far, just getting him integrated with you guys?
Really good. Obviously, his background with Coach Klanderman helps because some of the terminology that I would use is stuff that they would have used at North Dakota State when he was there. He was brought up a Tampa 2 guy, so he understands a lot of that stuff. Some of the cover 3 stuff is a little bit new to him, but he's had some exposure to it. So he's just a really sharp football coach. So his even though his learning curve might be great, he picks it up really quickly.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to jump in?
Hey, Joe, how hard is it as a new defensive coordinator to miss out on spring ball? And then how do you make up for that whenever you do get these guys back on campus?
Yeah, I don't know. It's uncharted waters here, isn't it? I mean, it's not ideal. Everybody's in the same boat, though. And I guess the way that I think about it is if we're maximizing our time, we're getting ahead. And I think that we're doing that as best we can. Now, as far as how that's going to affect us, probably have to simplify the package a little bit. Maybe all of the things that we wanted to do originally, we're not going to be able to do, at least not initially in the season. And the other thing is when we get back, I mean, we're getting plenty of meeting time right now. I think when we get back, the big thing is going to be we're going to have to spend more time in walkthroughs. We're going to have to spend more time on our feet probably than we would have otherwise.
Go ahead, Karen. You're on mute.
Unmute. There we go. Coach, can you hear me?
I can.
There we are. Okay. Sorry. Hi, Karen Kornacki, KMBC TV. So when you guys actually come back after all these virtual meetings and hopefully all the workouts the players are doing, how long do you think it's going to take for a team to be game ready?
That's a great question, and it would depend on what you were doing. I think that's a philosophical question for us, and the way that we play ball. Our style is about execution, and it takes a while to get that down. I think other teams at Texas Tech, that's all about tempo and just going as fast as you can, and the execution part is what it is. I think they might be able to get going a little bit faster. We need to be on the same page. We need to have our timing down offensively and defensively. And so it definitely will be a challenge. I didn't answer your question, but that's I'm saying I don't know the answer to that question. We'd love to have as much time as possible. I know that might not be the reality.
Hey, Ryan, can I go next?
Sorry, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Joe, it's Ryan Black with Manhattan Mercury. I wanted to know, how did the whole hire itself happen? Was it something that you just went and knocked on Chris's door and said, "Hey, I want the job"? Did Chris approach you? Can you just, because I mean, it came together so quickly. I was just curious how it all happened.
Well, I'd been interviewing for this job for 6 years, and so I think that Coach knew what I was all about. I certainly didn't lobby for it or anything like that. I think that he knew that I was ready. I certainly feel that I'm ready. Again, it was just how I approached every scenario. I always thought about it through a coordinator's eyes, even though I wasn't the coordinator. And so, long story short, yeah, he approached me. We had a great conversation. He asked me about philosophically what I thought and what I thought was best for the Big 12 and what I thought was best for our personnel moving forward. I gave him answers. I think he and I very much see eye to eye, and it was just kind of the perfect match. And I always thought of it like I understand, because I've been around Coach so long, what his message is. I understand, how he wants this team to get formulated. I understand what he wants the players to think. I understand how he wants everybody to approach things. And I don't think there's anybody else on this earth that can convey that message to the players better than I could. And so in that respect, I thought it was a perfect fit.
It's okay if I go, Ryan?
Go ahead.
Yeah, Coach, it's Matt Hall again. This may be a dumb sounding question, but does your work process feel normal yet? Meaning, are you in a routine? Does this feel like you guys kind of know how every day is going to go? And even though it's strange, it's become more normal to you?
Yes, honestly, yes. We have a very good staff routine. We kind of have our mornings are all about ball, all about us as a staff getting on the same page, working through our installation, working through our terminology, and then our afternoons are filled with recruiting, and then we generally do our position meetings and stuff in the late afternoon. And so, yeah, we've kind of gotten into a daily routine, as strange as it sounds.
I've got one, Ryan, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Joe, it's Wyatt Thompson with K-State Radio. Congratulations
Thank you.
on what's happened for you here. Happy for you. I'm curious as to when you take over like this, there are certainly similarities between you and Scotty, but there are differences. I'm wondering what that means in terms of who you look at as players in terms of leadership, because it seems to me that what you're dealing with here is pretty long distance things, and your leaders are going to have to be very, very big. So who are you kind of leaning on from the player standpoint right now?
Who am I leaning on from a player standpoint, leadership wise?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, some guys that come to my mind right away are Wyatt Hubert. I think he's been phenomenal. I think our players have done a great job of organizing themselves and keeping themselves motivated, checking in on themselves. Even though we're spread out all over the country, those guys are still very much interconnected. I think that there's daily communication going on with almost everybody on the football team. Wyatt Hubert comes to mind. Brock Monty comes to mind as a guy that's been above and beyond leadership-wise. And I'm just talking about defensive guys. Justin Hughes has been phenomenal. And I think Coach Kleiman's been very instrumental in organizing that a little bit too. He encouraged it from the outset. And so the communication's been great from the outset. Our message has been, we're going to over-communicate. And so we're daily dealing with people and each other. Not to leave anybody. I mean, there's a number of guys that have been really good with it, but those are three guys that for sure on all three levels come to my mind.
Let's go Mitch and then Karen.
Hey, Joe, it's Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. If you can step back a little bit to last year, can you put into context what translated best, that you may have had concerns about from the defensive scheme that was so successful for you guys at the FCS level coming to the Big 12?
Well, the cover three system that we had used was something that was different in the Big 12. Not many people, when you look at Big 12 football, by and large, it was 3 down quarters. And that's what most teams did. Now they did it differently and had different spices and whatever with it, but that's what you saw. And playing 3 deep or playing with a safety in the middle of the field was something that was just a little bit different that the league hadn't seen, or not on a grand scale anyway. And so just having the philosophy, I think, of we're going to play sound football. Might not always be the best situations, but we're going to put guys in positions where if we do our jobs, we can have success. That would be the thing that I think, rather than trying to junk things up and trying to be perfect in every scenario, I thought what we did best was we just tried to keep things as simple as we could, let guys play fast. And that translated really well, because that was similar to the philosophy at North Dakota State. Now, at North Dakota State, when you're year 6, 7, 8 in the system, you can put a lot more sugar on the toppings, so to speak. We couldn't do that a year ago. We're hoping to get to some more of that stuff this year, which will make us even more stout.
Go ahead, Karen, if you had one.
And okay, there I go. Sorry, I'm new to this Zoom thing, Coach.
Hey.
I'm still learning it. Coach, one of the things, and I know this might sound like a strange question, but I've been dealing with so much COVID stories and so many players that are isolated, and even though they have wonderful coaches, Coach Klanderman is so positive and his whole staff. And when you hear him talk, he just like makes you ready to jump out of your skin. What are you guys trying to do to keep your players as they're by themselves, but at the same time connected through this? And anybody you're recruiting, how do you go that extra mile to kind of help bridge that? Because you guys are naturally positive, you're naturally enthusiastic, and yet you're going through this technology. Do you guys have you talked about, the approach to take? Because so many people are feeling pretty, crummy right now, and what's going on in the world is really scary right now. And yet there are dreams and hopes that people are trying to focus on, but doing it through technology. So have you guys talked about the way to handle this with current players as well as players you're reaching out to?
Again, the overriding philosophy that we have as a staff is we're going to over communicate with you. We're going to touch these guys every day, in some cases multiple times a day. And you're right. When I'm alone and I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, and I don't hear from my coach for a week, my mind goes all over the place. But when I'm alone and I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, and my teammate's calling me up at 10 o'clock in the morning, and my coach is calling me up at 12 o'clock, and I got a position meeting at 4 o'clock, in some ways, it gets to be routine for those guys too. And they do feel connected, because you're absolutely right. You run the risk of those guys just being on their own. And can we be there to supervise them? And, no. But can we be involved in their lives? Can we, have daily discussions with them and make sure that their minds don't get too far off the task at hand? Absolutely. And so I would just say that our biggest thing with it has been doing the best we can to over communicate. We've also made sure that they have resources, be it Ben Newman, be it, Joe Hall, who works with our football team, that they can talk to other people besides their position coach too. Guys, if they have issues at home, that they would have the same support structure there as they would have had if they were here.
Got time for one more if anybody else has anything for Coach Malone. Go ahead, Ryan Black.
Okay, I need to. Okay, am I talking? I couldn't tell if I took myself off mute. Hey, Joe. Yeah, my question is: given that this is basically wiped out the entire spring, is it now like for these early enrollees? Are they like how it used to be, but like before guys came in early? Is that kind of how you're treating this now? Is there like regular freshmen, so to speak?
It really stinks for those guys because they came here with the purpose of wanting to play early and learning what we were doing. Now, the fortunate thing is a number of those guys got a jump on, whether just individual meetings with us coming in and learning terminology and learning some of that stuff. We have a little bit of a handle because of what we're doing with winter conditioning. We have a little bit of an evaluation of their movement skills and those kinds of things. So we have a little bit better evaluation on those guys as we would the guys that were still in high school. But you're right. They in terms of the reps, in terms of the pictures, they're going to lose that. And they are going to be just like everybody else. Now they might have a little bit of a jump on the learning, but as far as us getting an on the field with pads evaluation of them, it stinks. It's unfortunate for those guys, especially since we had a great number of them.